That's where our husband lives, so he's hooked out.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Rotary Club of the Woodlands. Our Thursday lunch. My name is Denton Florian. I'm your humble president. And beautiful day today. Glad to see everybody. I'd like to thank Dick Gabriel and Kim Freyu for being our greeters. I'm going to round of applause for them. If you didn't get a chance to meet them, please do. Great people. And I'd like to call Jim Frederick forward for our invocation and pledge. Jim.
I always love the prayer of St. Francis of Assisi, the prayer piece. So let's just join in that one. That jives so well with what we're all about. So let's pray. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there's hatred, let me sow love. Where there's injury, pardon. Where there's doubt, faith. Where there's despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. Amen. Join me in our pledges. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. On the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one indivisible.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Y'all can be seated. We have a gala coming up on Saturday. About that. Is everybody going? And we're looking for our next announcement. Debbie? Where's Debbie? There she is. Okay, Debbie, come on up and give us our announcements. We get anybody else that has an announcement? Debbie, come on up.
She's rescued.
So we still need some people to volunteer for the we've also, for next Thursday, we're going to start, for lack of a better day, Thursday, Thursday, where you can come in and everybody throws some coffee and sit back with you. Thursday, we're going to start about 11:15. So, we've also got some volunteer opportunities with service organizers. And then we've also got the tour of the monument. Both of those are on March the 22nd, so the sign-ups are on the website.
Hi, I'm still working on our Ben Franklin project. Would you raise your hand if you're familiar with the Ben Franklin project? Where we're each going to give $50 and we're going to put that money away for 50 years for future Rotarians. And we're going to leave a directive and a beautiful certificate showing who donated the money and what we would like to see them do with that money 50 years from now. So, would you raise your hand if you have not given me $50 and you intend to? Anybody? Okay. All right. I am available after Rotary. We can work out a plan. We can figure out how to either transfer the money or bring me a check. We'll figure it out. So just see me. I'm the lady in the green sweater, and I'll help you. I will help you part with your $50. Thank you very much.
Oh, bankers, what are you doing? That's the right woman for the job right there. This, by the way, if you haven't heard this, we are going to invest this money for 50 years and then take a portion of it and let the remainder ride for another 50 years and maybe challenge the club 50 years from now to match what we're doing or something. We'll let them figure that out. Actually, I might just talk to them. I might leave that discussion. You know, we could, if everybody donates in our club, everybody donates $50, we'll probably have a pretty solid $500,000 50 years from now that we can endow the foundation with and do scholarships with, and that would be a great legacy thing to do. Other announcements, have I missed anything? Okay. All right, well, it's time for our secretary's report. If Matt can come forward, I want a round of applause for Matt Washworth. Future president, current secretary, all around good day.
All righty. Thank you, Dick. We have 3 guests today. I'll start with Bob Halsey. Claire, you here? Oh. Okay, Claire's a guest of Cindy Heiser. You want to say, I know I caught you on the food line. So, you're also.
Hi, good morning. It's good morning. I apologise for my croaky voice. My mouth was my voice. And with a Scottish accent, it's sometimes even more difficult. But I own Spinga, which is a boutique fitness studio on the waterway. We're right opposite the cinema and next door to what used to be the restaurant. We teach 1-hour classes, 20 minutes on a spin bike, 20 minutes of weight training, and 20 minutes of yoga. We also teach just yoga classes, just strength training classes, and we do assisted stretch therapy, normative compression, and in-body scanning. So we've been there for 6 years, and very few people know that we're there, so that's why I'm here, just to try to promote the studio, and also to say, if anyone has any organisations or you have a company that runs like a wellness program, and you need nutritionists, and you want stretch therapy, and you just want, you know, a lot of companies, their insurance company offer money off memberships or incentives for people to be fitter and healthier, therefore have less sick time and less injuries. So if anybody was interested or wants to do any sort of fundraising, charity classes, I would love to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you. And then Holly. I'm going to catch you while you're sitting down. Holly Stewart. Yes.
All right. My guest, Holly Stewart. Holly is a sales rep with Aetna Group Health Insurance. So she and I work together. She helps me with underwriting, plan design, and all those types of things. She's in visiting in San Antonio, so I said, "Go to lunch."
Thanks, Todd. And then the last guest, Pepe. Yeah, he is visiting us from Monterrey, Mexico, and is here a lot. If you want to come up front, you have your flag. We'll do a flag exchange right now. The man right there has it. Uh-oh. Protect here. You can just do it with that. But you're here in the Woodlands a lot. And you're going to visit us more often. Yes. Okay. I'll let you talk. So here, I'll let Pepe talk about himself.
Hello, good afternoon. I live in Monterey, Mexico. And for the past years, I have 6 months.
start again.
There we go, back to business. I've asked everybody anybody that cares to give me the titles of your favorite books. We're producing a book list for our club, and this could be just your favorite books. I mean, something that's meant a lot to you, or might maybe have to do with your hobby. It could be a novel, it could be a biography, science fiction, gardening, whatever. If you have a favorite book, something that's meant you, get that title to me because we're wrapping that up, and we'll publish that a little bit later. All right, this is a great day. I'm really excited about our speaker today, because he's a very close friend of mine. I guess we've known each other more than 15 years, pushing 20 years now, Lee. We often break bread together, not often enough, but whenever I'm in Huntsville, I call Lee, and we go have lunch, and he calls me every now and then. He is an artist. He's been a professional artist full-time since 1982. And he was interested in art from a very young age, as most artists are. They just kind of got that spark, and they pick up a pencil or crayons or whatever. And I think you were about 8 years old when you first picked up a paintbrush. Constantly involved in art classes through high school. He majored in art at Long Morris College, which is a small Methodist junior college in Jacksonville, Texas, and completed his degree at Seminary College at Shreveport. He's known for his landscapes, his historical art, and his murals. I'm a sucker for a good landscape. His landscapes are among the most beautiful that I've ever seen. I really, really like them and appreciate them. And we met, I forgot exactly how maybe it was the museum. Through the museum, I commissioned Lee to do about 10 paintings for the documentary on Sam Houston. So his work, including this painting right here, this is a depiction of when Sam and Margaret Houston met in Mobile, Alabama, and this painting is in the documentary film. He has work currently hanging in the Texas State Capitol building. He's been commissioned by President George H.W. Bush, and some of his murals are has anybody been to the River Oaks Country Club? If you've been down into the wine cellar, if you haven't, go down there just to look at it, because they have a wonderful wine cellar. But the way to get there, you have to go through this very utilitarian hallway. It looks like you're on your way to the laundromat or something like that. And he made that hallway. He made Tuscany, Italy out of this hallway. It's absolutely jaw-dropping. That particular mural. I mean, ceiling, walls, everything. And he has a mural at the Memorial Stadium at the University of Texas, way up high. I've never seen it because they won't let me on the elevator. I don't give them enough money to go up there. But Craig Eisler went down and he has an entire suite in his name. Maybe I'll get an invitation at some point. Maybe. Okay. He did the Waco Mammoth Site murals, the National Monument. What is the title of that? The Waco Mammoth National Monument. They found some mammoth bones and they built a monument there, and we did some absolutely beautiful murals for that. And what is the name of the restaurant down in Houston, the Italian restaurant? Fratelli's. There's a restaurant that is in a kind of it's in a little strip center down there, but you walk in and it is one of the finest Italian restaurants in Houston, no doubt. And the murals that he's painted all the walls in that restaurant, and it's worth the trip to go down there just to look at the artwork. One time, I'm going to tell you this little story, shortly after Lee and I met, because I lived in Austin a long time, and we were talking about art and talking about his murals and different things. Things we had in common. We actually knew some of the same people. And I was telling him about these columns in the Driscoll Hotel, which were gorgeous. They weren't marble, they had been painted marble. And as I recall, they were dark green or something, and they had the guy did it with a feather, a turkey feather, and he painted the marbling in there. And unless you got right up on those, you couldn't tell it wasn't real marble. And so I told him all about these columns. And when I finally shut up, he looks at me and he goes, yeah, I said, I did this. So, you know, just because nobody can understand what the heck you're talking about, that doesn't make you an artist. Okay? There's more to it than that. The ability to draw emotions out of us by putting paint onto a canvas with a brush. When most of us did that last, we were repainting the bathroom, right? Lee takes that to a different level, and I'd like to introduce you to my very good friend, Lee Jamison.
Now I have to live up to that. I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage in that my script for my speech is actually up in the slides. So I'm going to be turning around and showing you my bald spot a lot. But I did want to open with a thanks to Rotarians. I made note on this painting that this is actually not the one that I did from the window of Rotary Hall when I was a college student at Centenary College, but it was inspired by that, and I had my wife take the same pose as the young lady that I was painting at the time. But the idea was that I had a second floor room in Rotary Hall, and I was very thankful for the gift of the Rotarians to my education and my housing while I was there. So I wanted to say, you know, there are service things that continue to have an impact long after you have made the gifts, and that's one of those is to have had that experience. I wanted to talk about art and its relationship to history, and I think we have a tendency to think a little too much of words and a little too little of images. And the way we actually learn things is built around incorporating both of those ideas. And so I want to play a little bit with the alphabet because our alphabet started off with artistic representations that were intended to suggest that you had these relationships between words that were common and some symbol that was supposed to remind you of what a sound was. And so our alphabet dates to an alphabet from the Middle East that actually goes back thousands of years, and an early symbol for the letter A was actually a bull, the head of a bull. And interestingly, if you look at the kind of cattle that was, the name of it is Auroch, which also starts with an A. But how do you utilize both art and language to tell a story? Okay, let's see if I can make this. Too often, when we're trying to learn something, this is the image that we see. It's not exactly this first image. This was one of the first pages in the art history book that I studied from when I started art history. It was Gardner's Art Through the Ages, and I love that book. But then, I want to take you on a short tour of my first day. I was so excited about having the opportunity to take art history because I had been studying history since I was a little kid. It was one of the reasons I learned to read, because reading was anguish to me. I have dyslexia, and if you're going to make the letters all line up the way they're supposed to be, you have to be really motivated when you have that particular problem. So I had my family had American Heritage Magazine, which was unique for being a hardback magazine that arrived 10 times a year or something like that. And for years, I would just pour through pictures. And then finally, I learned how to read, and this stuff began to make some sense to me. But you can see what an impact it can make on you if you don't just sit there and work at it. So I was about 3 pages into my art history book, and I arrived at this, and it struck me like lightning. And the reason that it did was this is a 7,000-year-old reconstruction, a 7,000-year-old kind of altar space. And I've been active in church and very interested in the things that you read about in the Bible and stuff like that. And there's so many things that got plugged together in this one image. Now, okay, we've already talked about the letter A. And so you've got references right there to the beginnings of our letter A. This goes back, as I say, 7,000 years. And there are all your letter A's sitting everywhere. But there's also another reference, and that is when you read the Old Testament, you hear about the horns of the altar. And even if you're talking about a Hebrew altar in front of the temple, where you have these things on the corner, well, guess where that originated from? It came from images like this, where the horns were literally representations of the horns of bulls. And what art does for us is it allows us to connect ideas together. Now, as a fine artist, I love to do things just for the pretty pictures. But as a historical artist, I also want to connect ideas together. And so this was immensely exciting to me. And I'll tell you that if you want to understand who murdered who to be powerful, you study political history. But if you want to understand how people lived, you learn art history. And so this is one of the most exciting things that I ever saw, and I love art history for that reason. Now, we've got this reference to the bulls, and human beings have been fascinated for bulls for a long time. I knew when I was studying art history that fascination went back about 16,000 years. And in the mid-90s, Chauvet Cave was discovered. It's a cave that's only accessible through entrances that today are underwater, because since this cave was painted, the way that you get into it has been submerged because of climate change that happened 14,000 years ago. It's in southern Spain, very close to France. This menagerie of animals that you see there was actually painted 32,000 years ago. And the people who did paint it, they were telling a kind of story about what's really interesting, what's fascinating to them, and what they can observe. I'm in awe of the observational capacity of the artists who did this, because we like to think of ancient art as being something like stick figures or something like that. Whoever did that had done careful observation of very dangerous animals. In some cases up close, they're in the same group of paintings. There are examples of European lions. So whoever did this observed European lions up close, and you can tell that they're even breathing. That they've observed the way they would breathe and such. that's a thing about human history that is so remarkable to me, that you're looking at something that had been developed with a culture, because people didn't just suddenly, there are at least 5 artists who participated in this, and they are all working on a very high level of capability. They've been taught this art skill. So 32,000 years ago, before we have any idea of writing or anything like that, we know that there is a culture in Southern Europe that is transmitting a very difficult skill to learn, and maintains a pretty consistent way of teaching that skill over more than 10,000 years. One of the things that I've noticed about my own study of the art of the past is that you see art, that realistic art, is almost always hidden away. And that the art that is more symbolic, more like stick figures, is pretty easy to find. So you can find very symbolic kinds of art all across the world. On the outside of things, they are, you'll see rocks that have big, very abstract seeming images carved on them. But if you want to find the realistic looking art, you have to go in the caves. Even when the Chauvet caves were painted, it was an arduous trip to get to where the art was. And one of the reasons that I suspect this is true is because art is very democratic. If you have an abstract representational system like language, it's easy to set the system up so that other people can't understand what you're saying. You can keep your secrets. But if you're doing painting like we saw on the previous slide, oops, everybody can tell what that is. You can tell those are bison. You can tell those are aurochs. And you can tell on the other panels that they're horses and they're lions and so forth. So there's no language barrier to art. That makes it very democratic. And we as human beings don't really like things to be that easily accessible. So the places where you find the realism in ancient art are all hidden away. Art also shows you a whole suite of concepts at one time in a non-linear way that reveals what writing tends to hide. So one of the issues that I would point out in the first slide was that, yeah, you can tell a history in a bunch of words. And that history brings up images in your mind, but it can only bring up images that are based on stuff you already know. So a painting or a photograph or something like that that presents information to you graphically can show you things you don't know. And it can ask you, by the fact that it's there, to kind of figure out a context for understanding why it exists. So writing doesn't necessarily, one of the things that I will point out, let's see, yes, this is a painting of the inaugural ball for Sam Houston in 1842. This is his second term as president. And we have written descriptions of this, and thanks to that, I did have some idea what was in the presentation around the fireplace. But it gave me no indication what the lighting was like, what the space was lit, what the space looked like. It didn't give me any idea what people wore. It didn't give me any idea what kind of size the space was or anything like that. I had to do all kinds of research to do the stage dressing on these things, but those are the reasons why art is a way of learning how people live. Because in order for you to know all that stuff, you have to go and find it out elsewhere. And then you can show things like how the reflectors were done on candelabras and so forth. And how the women on the frontier of Texas, the night of this ball, there was a family on the edge of Austin that was scalped and killed by the Comanches. So they're in a really frontier place, but the fashions that they're wearing are elegant. The furnishings they will have in their own homes, they're also elegant and up to date. You'll just have people living in log cabins with these modern things. So there's also lots of opportunities to get things wrong. In the previous painting, I had the Senate chambers on the wrong side of the building. I didn't realize that it was not hard for them to have forms of paint to adorn the walls in a log cabin, and that it was in fact common to have a kind of whitewash for interior spaces. And so this painting, which was done 5 years later for the Bastrop County Historical Society, demonstrates what I've learned in the interim. It was rare to have windows that had glass in them, but it was not at all rare to have fine clothing, although there was a lot of variability. In this particular instance, this is a mass wedding by the Catholic priest Michael Muldoon, and because Mexico only provided just a smattering of clergy, he would marry people, 20, 25 couples at a time. And the largest of those instances appears to have been at Bastrop, when 25 couples were married at one time after everybody had been duly baptized. And this was how it was possible for them to gain access to property rights, because you couldn't have property rights unless you'd been baptized as a Catholic. So on the one hand, you've got art. Art is a way that you get information in a different, faster, more rapidly accessible way. But it's also a way that art that you can learn a variety of different things. But art also is a means of engaging people's emotions in the power of the woman. I didn't paint this painting. Joseph Turner, a Scottish artist, did. It's from the 1850s, I think, or 1830s. This is, and Turner was fascinated with many of the same things I'm fascinated with. One of them is transitions in technology. So you see here the irony of a mighty British battleship, man of war, being dragged to be broken up a steam tug. And according to Wikipedia, a 2005 poll by BBC found The Fighting Temeraire by Turner to be the most beloved painting in the UK. It depicts the towing of this 100-plus gun ship of a line to be broken up for scrap. But it does it in a way that emphasizes how the sun is setting on one way of looking at the world and rising on another. There you go. This one I did paint. Alamo defenders write their wills, that's the name of the piece. And I wanted to show a little bit about just the drama before events at the Battle of the Alamo. If you look carefully along the edge of the river, you can see the heads of the Mexican soldiers gathering for their assault on the Alamo. And this is taken from the, I think it's the southwest corner of the Alamo itself, where the largest cannon was. This was the first quiet evening that the defenders had almost since the Mexicans arrived a couple of weeks before. And that was to lull them into a false sense of security. But in the meantime, they took the opportunity to write their wills, and astonishingly, these wills were gathered up by the Mexicans and more or less honored. This painting is from the San Jacinto battleground, and I painted this one strictly for the emotional effect of that place for me, because underneath the beauty of it, this calm of the space, you're looking across the marshes. That's a graveyard, because during the assault by the Texans, having come around both sides of Mexican battlements, the Mexicans were panicked, and the only place they had to go because of Santa Anna's foolishness was to their rear. Well, unfortunately, that was a marsh, and everybody who got out there got bogged down and became easy targets. So I look at that, that is, as much as anything else, what won the battle for the Texans at the Battle of San Jacinto, and changed the destiny of the North American continent. And it's such a place of consequence, and such rapid consequence, and so great. To me, it's a very somber sight to know what that is and what its consequences were. So it's a painting that's full of emotion to me, and should be, I think, for anybody who understands Texas history. This too is a very emotional image. Very near the end of his life, Sam Houston, who had recently argued in a letter to Robert E. Lee for the release of Alabama Coshada Braves, who had been drafted into the Confederate Army because they had no part in what the Confederacy was doing. There was no benefit to the Alabama Coshada to be a part of that army, and gratitude for that, and partly because they knew he was very ill. The tribe sent an entourage out to him to thank him and also to wish him well, because they knew that he didn't have long to live, and he knew that he didn't have long to live. So Jeff Hamilton tells the story of them sitting up and down the porch on the Steamboat House, which you can still see. It's not in the same location, but you can still see this. And so I've depicted it in its original location and shown them up and down the porch singing the sad songs that Hamilton told of their singing to him. It's a moment that's full of pathos and a significant moment for people who love Texas history and San Luis. Okay. Now, Dan mentioned the Waco Mammoth National Monument. This is one of the murals that I did there. We wanted to show how big these animals were, and also give a sense of what it would be like for you to be there. Okay, so that's a walking area as you come into the dig site. In the dig site, you go around where the excavations have been, and you can see bones of the animals in the ground. And it's one of the most marvelous things, because you can see not only that they're there, but you can begin to work out elements of what may have happened to them to put them in that position dead. But it's very difficult when you're looking down on the bones from above to get a sense of how big these animals would have been if you were right next to them. That fellow he's 12 feet tall. So when you stand next to him, I don't come up to the skin under his belly. It's like this on me. And it's awesome to be around it. And when you're to get the opportunity to show a scientific fact in a way that's not just cut and dried, and it's also not desiccating in the ground, that's a really exciting part of being an artist. I love to do scientific illustration, and I really enjoyed this particular project. It also would advance it. There you go. And it also, you can see it in context here. We did an interpretive mural that showed our best guess about how these many animals may have died. At the time that I did this, it had recently been discovered that there were up to 5 different death events that had happened, and I wanted to show what had happened with the lowest level, the first of those death events, to the best of my ability to work something out. And we knew that there had been a flood of water into the space, and that the animals had been distributed around a rough circle, modern elephants to defensive circles. So we see evidence of that happening in this particular instance. So that was also an opportunity to interpret them. Now, this is another of the paintings that was done for the Sam Houston project. This is currently in Robert Black's office in the Capitol, and this is the Turkish robe where Sam Houston received a gift from the Sultan of Turkey, and he was showing it off for Margaret, who got a great laugh out of it. but it's just one of those really human moments in Texas history, and one that was a joy to illustrate. Let's go to the next. And this, okay, I'm going to blank on this name. Charles Stewart, yes. Charles Stewart, who is said to have designed the Texas flag. This was done about 5 years ago, something like that. And Denton did a nice picture there, and I thought I would thank him for having done so. I used that at for the tailpiece of my book. So anyway, the thing about art as a means of telling a story is that, one, it can pull a lot of ideas together in one space and do it efficiently and carry it out over time. Two, it can show you things that are just hidden by written texts. And then third, it can engage your emotions so that you can begin to get a sense of what the import of history is for you, what it means to have been there, what the impact of it is on us today. And that's my talk. Okay, do you have any questions?
In the Texans writing their wills, what was the building on the horizon?
That was the okay. It was the church. What is the name of that church again?
One of the big ones.
San Fernando Cathedral. That's right. Okay. Yes. So it was that church. The church itself is still there. That building no longer exists. But
And there was a screen running in front of it.
yes, but so to do the picture, I had to lay out a map of how it was, how the city would look from, and I was using illustrations that were made by Seth Eastman and a couple of other artists who were posted at the Alamo after statehood when the U.S. Army made it into a kind of depot. And these artists were going in and showing you scenes of San Antonio as they appeared from the Alamo. So that was my primary source for what you could see from there, and then I was also laying out maps so that I could get a sense of how far down could you look across that drop down to the surface of the water and stuff like that. So it's a lot of research to try to do that. In fact, I knew that where the moon was in relation to the landscape because I had contacted a guy at NASA named, I think, David Seal, who was in charge of a website that would show you where all the planets and stars and everything were at a particular, or from a particular location on Earth at a particular time of day. And he hadn't let that go back far enough to get all the way to the Alamo. I asked him to do it, and he did. so I could actually just figure out what the angle of the moon was at a particular time. Yeah.
You said you were an artist. I just studied art history
A particular artist who influences my painting. I think when I was in college, the one that was most influential to me was Claude Monet. As I got deeper into, I'm going to blank on this name too. American artist started out as pardon? Not Wyatt. Although, pardon, I was thinking of this, is that he started out as a Civil War illustrator and became very famous and Okay, yeah, Winslow Homer. So those are two of the most influential on me, and but you know, I've got lots of other influences along the way, and each of them for different reasons. And I like Leonardo da Vinci because he was so interested in using his visual way of looking at the world to analyze things like hydraulics and stuff. Who did hydraulic studies in the 1400s? Leonardo da Vinci did. Any other questions?
I wonder if you would go back to the picture that you painted of the San Jacinto monument.
San Jacinto Monument.
Yes, because I was very moved by your description of that as being very emotional and filled with emotion, not only for you as the artist, but for people that look at it. And so I was wondering if we could look at that painting again, we could pull it up. I would be really interested in knowing, as you were painting it, what were the emotions that you actually drew in that painting? What were the things that you drew in that painting that for you capture that kind of emotion that you had when you were observing that site? Because when I look at that painting, I see just a beautiful landscape and a beautiful painting. And I'm sure that that's the one. Thank you very much. And I'm sure that embedded in that painting somewhere is your sort of interpretation and trying to express that emotion.
There are.
Would you mind?
It's very okay. So it doesn't. You don't see this. You just have to know it's there. And I tried to give a sense of the motion of the clouds across the sky with the way I used the perspective of them. But I also put the shadows of the clouds on the marsh grasses and on the foliage that's on the far right side. I wanted to give a sense of that for somebody who would look at it and try to really see into it. That you've got this shadow that crosses across the space. And so that's my primary way.
That's what you were thinking of your actually seeing.
Right.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
One more. When it comes to historical pieces, do you have an opinion on private market versus public market that should be displayed when it comes to your art or historical pieces that circulate?
I really don't think one way of presenting it privately or publicly is superior to another. I just want the paintings to be in a place where people can see them. So the one of San Jacinto Monument, that was in a book called The Art of Texas State Parks that did a tour of, I think, 6 museum spaces in Texas. So, you know, they're public spaces. Those are, you know, that's one way of getting it out where people can see it. I also did that with my own book, Ode to East Texas, several paintings from which are out in the foyer. I just think it's important for art to be seen. I really like it to be in the hands of owners who love what they have. But it's really nice to be able to have them seen and to give a sense in your captioning of what's happening.
Thanks for coming. I appreciate that very much. We need to do breakfast at the Texan Cafe. Where is it? You're an artistic genius. You've told me that many times. You need to come back over to the house and the 4 of us will go have dinner. How about that? Is that interesting? You know, when the San exactly what it is. If they excavated that area behind where the monument is, they would find a mass grave. And they actually found several skulls. John James Audubon came and visited Sam Houston in the fall of 1836, and he went and looked around on the battlefield, and he found the skulls of some Mexican soldiers, and he took them back to Pennsylvania. They recently found them like 25 years ago or something. And a forensic anthropologist made one of those like the law enforcement people do. He took the skull and rebuilt it. So, you know, we have these busts of these Mexican soldiers that died at San Jacinto. You can see damage, you know, on the skulls. They made resin copies of them. And, I always wondered what the Mexicans might have thought about that. I mean, if those were U.S. Marines, they're being held to pay, you know. But I asked him, I said, what did Mexico have to say? Did they? And then, you know, they didn't care really. So I don't know, that's a cultural difference maybe, or something, but I just thought that was interesting. But the hubris and the grave of hubris, I thought that was brilliant. Thank you for coming. Good to see you, brother. And we have Todd Bryant to come forward, our Sergeant at Arms.
All right. How's everybody? Warming up in here a little bit? All right. So, an elderly but hardy cattleman from Texas once told his young female neighbor that if she wanted to live a long life, the secret was to sprinkle a bit of gunpowder on her oatmeal every morning. So this young lady did this every morning religiously, and she lived to the age of 103. She left behind 14 children, 30 grandchildren, 21 great-grandchildren, and a 40-foot crater where the crematorium used to be. So a cowboy rode into town and stopped at a saloon for a drink. And unfortunately, the locals always had a habit of picking on strangers, which he was. When he finished his drink, he found that his horse had been stolen. So he went back into the bar, handily flipped his gun in the air, caught it in midair, and fired 2 shots into the roof of the saloon. "Which one of you sidewinders stole my horse?" he yelled with surprising forcefulness. Nobody answered. "All right, I'm going to have another beer, and if my horse ain't back outside by the time I finish, I'm going to do what I had to do in Texas. And I don't like to do what I had to do in Texas." Some of the locals shifted restlessly. The man, true to his word, had another beer, walked outside, and his horse had been returned to the post. He saddled up and started to ride out of town. The bartender wandered out of the bar and said, "Say, partner, before you leave, what happened in Texas?" The cowboy turned back and said, "I had to walk home." Okay, so we have a $25 gift certificate that was donated by Judy Olson. Thank you, Judy. And we raised $50 for polio research today. So if you'll draw our lucky ticket. And I don't see Alan here today, so we might be in luck.
Yeah.
All right, it is 609-7530. 609-7530. All right. Congratulations. Sergeant at Arms is out.
Okay, thank you, Todd. All right, if you all would stand up, we will close our meeting with a 4-way test, as is our tradition. And for those of you who are guests, it's on the screen up there. The first, everything we think they are due. Number 1, is it the truth? Number 2, is it fair to all concerned? Number 3, will it build goodwill and better friendships? Number 4, is it beneficial to all concerned? And for our club, is it fun? Go out and enjoy the rest of the day and make some magic this week.